Hello and welcome to this week's Welsh Premiership Cup preview pod on the Welsh Prem Pod channel. As you may notice, we're a man down today. Adam Cleary's off on his holidays again, so it's just me and Tobias today, which is a shame because I know I'd got the chance to go and see Swansea v Carmarthen Quins last week, and he really enjoyed it. So a shame he can't be here to talk about it. But Tobias went to see a game. We'll be talking about all the other games from last week, as well as previewing the upcoming games over this weekend as well. So we'll start off with the first game in the eastern side of the draw then. And Ebervale were well beaten by Cardiff at Eugene Cross Park. So Tobias, what did you make of that game?
Yeah, it was a surprising win for Cardiff in a way. I thought it'd be a tight game, but 27-3 the final score is a bit of a difference in there. I thought the Cardiff pack played the conditions very well. I thought they were strong up front, set good ball to the halfbacks. And talk about halfbacks, so Dan Fish had a cracking game as well, playing 10. I think his boot kicking in behind again, used to wear the conditions well, and Cardiff come away with a deserved victory.
Yeah, it's a weird one because obviously Cardiff were the best team before COVID, really, and Ebervale were struggling. Looked like they probably finished second bottom before COVID. A lot's changed in terms of both squads. Ebu obviously brought a lot of quality players in, and that's why they were undefeated before this week. So yeah, and obviously Cardiff were coming off the back of that sort of surprise loss to Newport last week. So we did think it'd be a much tighter game, but yeah, as we mentioned, some of the Cardiff players that were available to them coming back in, the likes of Dan Fish, I think that probably was the difference in the end, really. I know they had a few other Cardiff rugby boys, like Harry Millard in there as well. And they'll have those boys again this coming weekend, which we'll talk about in a bit. I know Ebu had a couple of yellow cards that would have cost them as well. Dave Whiten, I think. Silly hit, really. But
could have been a red.
Yeah, just needless, really. I know Greg will be tearing his hair out at that one. But yeah, as you said, Dan Fish was superb. Kicked them into the corners, and that's sort of where they built their game on, because 4 tries, 2 from Gwilym Bradley and 2 from Iestyn Harris as well, just come from just exerting that pressure on the line. And obviously, yeah, that all started with the halfbacks.
Yeah, I thought set piece wise as well, the Cardiff looked very strong last weekend. You know, the scrum, the line-out went well considering the conditions, and said it was a well-deserved victory in the end from.
So moving on then to the next game in the eastern side of the draw, and Pontypridd took on Merthyr at Sardis Road. So we had Zach go and watch that game for us and do some match reports. And from what Zach said, it was a real arm wrestle of a game. We'll talk about some of the standout players in that. Obviously, Ben Bonnell made our team of the week. We talked about Dan Fish. Dan Fish was very unlucky not to get in, really, and that's a credit to young Ben Bonnell, how good he was. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, well, it sounded like a game of 2 halves. I think Merthyr started off the game strongly. I think they went into break with a 14 points to 5 lead. But you got credit Ponty, a young side they've got, and they come back second half against a strong Merthyr side and turned the game around. I think Merthyr will be disappointed because they haven't been on the best of form, but going in away to Ponty with a decent lead at half time, you'd think that they'd have the strength to finish the game off. But like we said, credit to young Ben Bonnell, ruthless with the boot again this week. And fair play to Ponty for coming back from behind, and they deserved the win in the end from their second half performance.
Yeah, you mentioned it was a game of 2 halves, and I think that was evident really in the back row, because Merthyr's back row were really dominant in the first half with their tackles and turnovers, and then that sort of switched in the second row. I know Ponty's back row, like Christian Parker, Callie James, Evan Lloyd. I know they were fantastic then in the second half. Obviously, we know what Christian Parker's like. He's been around for a few years. But the other 2 young boys as well. So it's good to see them sort of tearing it up.
Yeah, I thought, well, like you said, the whole back row, I thought Evan Lloyd, especially for Ponty, was outstanding. Again, only a young boy, recently come through the World's Under-20s, but credit to him. And this is where the likes of these players coming from the Wales 20s should be playing now to get the game time at a good level. And hopefully they'll move on to regional rugby soon enough. But this level, playing a Merthyr and a pack like Merthyr got is a great experience. And the performance he put in as well done him no harm at all.
Yeah, and moving on then to the final game in the eastern side, Newport made the long trip to Parc Iris to face RGC. RGC's first home game of the season. It was a real scrappy battle, in fairness. There's a lot of mistakes. Obviously, the weather didn't help. The weather wasn't great. But I felt Will Reid and Matt O'Brien managed the game reasonably well from 10 and 12. Just similar to what we said with Dan Fish, really. Just kick to the corners and just put that pressure on RGC. RGC, to be fair, in the conditions, scored some fantastic tries. One of them was quite lucky, really, come off the leg of a Newport player. But the one started with Dion Jones, the fullback, with a little chip through, regather. And I think it was Rhys Tudor that scored that one. Fantastic, considering the conditions that they were playing in. So you can see sort of the style of rugby they're trying to play, but unfortunately they just couldn't get that win again, so they will be disappointed. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, like you said, O'Brien and Will Reid managed the game well, but I said last week I thought RGC would be a complete different side at home. And again, we talked about game in two halves. I think RGC were up at half time 15 points to 3 or something similar to that, and we said one cracking try as well. And at that point, you're thinking, RGC going to go on to win this? But credit to Newport, who've had a very good start to the season so far. Come back away from home, play some good rugby in the second half to win the game. But, we say RGC improving, but they really are. I think you look at the performance this week compared to 2 weeks ago when they played Cardiff in that first weekend. I think they've come on leaps and bounds. And now it's time. And this group especially, I think, is wide open. It's still every team can beat anyone.
Yeah, so moving on to the Western Conference then. And I know you went to go and see the Bridgend v Aberavon game, yourself and Luke Hawkins, didn't you? So over to you then. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it was a decent game considering, again, the conditions and everything going on. I think the first half was a bit slow, a lot of kicking, which is what you'd expect. Aberavon stood the pack, especially, I thought were impressive, considering that I think they had the 2 back rows and second row all go off injured, and they ended up with the hooker Luke Davis going into the back row come the end of the game. There was so many injuries in there. But yeah, first half, a bit scrappy. I think Aberavon went into the break 7-6 ahead. Bridgend's discipline could have cost them a lot more, 2 yellow cards in the first half. But yeah, second half, they played to Aberavon. The pack took charge. They were dominant, especially in the scrums. I think nearly every scrum Aberavon had, they come away with a penalty. And I think that made a difference in the end. And, it was a deserved victory and a strong performance up front. But you got to give some credit to Bridgend. I don't think many people were expecting anything from them to come out and win the game. But I thought fullback Owen Howe kicked 5 penalties and some very good kicks from far out in there. And the result's not a bad result. Obviously, they would have liked a lot more from it. But yeah, Aberavon were impressive.
Yeah, it's something we said every week since the Prem Cup started, isn't it? We are surprised how well Bridgend have actually come on, considering how they were before lockdown. And Aberavon, obviously, fantastic side, unbeaten still. So yeah, it was probably surprising to see them that close. And like you said, Owen Howe, fantastic game management, really. Just keep the board ticking over. To score 5 penalties, like another honourable mention for our team of the week, really. And we obviously had Jack Maynard as our guest on our podcast yesterday, which if you haven't seen, you can see that on our YouTube channel. So go check that out. But Jack Maynard was saying how close the league is now and how anyone can beat anyone on that day. And Bridgend probably need a little bit of luck, but if they were going to win that game against Aberavon, the quality that Aberavon have, but you can definitely see, you can see moments in that game that Bridgend could have won that game.
Yeah, definitely. I think there were times where Abraham were on their own line, pretended to have a line out 5 meters out, the line would go wrong. The chances were there, but again, Abraham could have gone and scored more. But like we said, considering what the league looked like before COVID, I know Abraham were top 2, 3, pushing Cardiff for the title. Bridgend looked like they were going to go down. Bridgend have come on, but I think the whole league itself is a lot more competitive this year. And like we said, maybe a lot of people weren't expecting much from Bridgend, but they give him a tough game.
And I know we mentioned on the podcast last week that Bridgend had some front row struggles. So how did they get on in the front row?
Yeah, to be honest with you, they did struggle a bit, but it's what you expect. There was a lot of players missing, and I think around the park wise, I thought they were decent. I think it's just scrum time, and Abraham have got a good pack. We all know that Abraham is strong up front anyway. Reece Force is starting a loose head, and he did give Curtis Hicks a bit of a tough time scrummaging wise. But you got to give these boys time. New to the environment, he's new to this Bridgend side. He's got to get stuck in, know his teammates, and he's playing again this week, and he'll have a better day of it. But yeah, it's different because you're bringing so many different boys in, and it's not just Bridgend, all the sides. You're bringing new boys in time, but these boys are going to take time. It's not one game, and they're going to come in straight away and change things. So he will get better, and again, that's probably the toughest loose edge you can come up with, probably.
Yeah. Moving on then to the second game in the Western Conference, and Llandovery come out worthy winners against Llanelli, beating them 39-12. What were your thoughts on that game?
Well, to be honest with you, it's what you expect from Llandovery, isn't it? A very, very strong attacking back line, and they scored some good tries again this weekend. Llanelli is struggling a bit this year. Didn't play too badly, but shows the strength of Llandovery this year, I thought. They managed the game well. I think James Garland, the halfbacks, had a good game, and I know we told them Will Thomas, the fullback, was outstanding as well. Yeah, as well. I think what you got to take out of this is not every side, and especially the likes of Swansea, where there's a lot of young boys there in a minute. They're going to be targeting this Prem Cup now. This is a good learning and building experience for these younger boys, ready for the Premiership season we've got coming ahead in November, December. And I think, they might not have won a game yet, but they are improving and they're gelling as a side, getting a lot of young boys in there. And I think, come the new year, I think Llanelli will start winning games and giving sides closer matches.
Yeah, and you mentioned Swansea there then, so we'll move on to the last game of last weekend then. And Swansea hosted Carmarthen at St Helens. Carmarthen came away 21-6 winners. What were your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I don't think it was the best of games, but again, the conditions didn't help. I think the first half was quite even. I think the sides went in 6-0, I want to say, half time. So fair play, I thought both packs were pretty strong, but I think in the end, the quality of that Quinn side paid evidence, and they come away with a couple of tries at the end. But it's a good win for the Quins, but it's not too bad of a performance for Swansea either. So, I think both sides will take positives. Obviously, there's stuff to learn for both, though.
Yeah, pretty similar to the Llandovery-Llanelli game, really, wasn't it? Swansea put up a good fight in poor conditions, but Carmarthen just had that little bit, just a little bit more quality, really. We've mentioned countless times on the podcast the players they have available this season. Obviously, another former guest, Haydn Tobias, came into the row for them because young Jack Price started for the Scarlets on the weekend. So congratulations to him. I believe that was his first start for the Scarlets, which really shows sort of his progression in the Premiership. And I know everyone at Quins is really proud of him and really happy to see him kick on with the Scarlets. But yeah, going back to the game, I know Adam went to see that game and he was very complimentary of Hanno Dirksen, ex-Ospreys winger, obviously. He was playing in the centre for Swansea, and I think aggressive was the word I'd use. Very, or assertive was the word he used. He put in some big hits, I think, for Swansea, and I think he'll be really massive to have around the squad for them. Obviously, someone that's been around the professional environment for so long. Yeah, so after last week's fixtures then, we'll talk about the table now. So on the eastern side of the draw, Cardiff have moved back up to first place with a win over Ebu. Ebu, who were undefeated and top of the eastern side of the league, have dropped down to fourth. Cardiff followed by Newport and Pontypridd before Ebu, and then Merthyr and then RGC at the bottom there, still yet to win a game. But obviously we mentioned they've been improving, and they host Ebu this week in what will be a massive game for both clubs, really. In the western side then, Aberavon atop, still undefeated. Llandovery and Carmarthen following close behind them. And then at the tail end then, Bridgend, Llanelli and Swansea, with Llanelli and Swansea still yet to win a game as well. So yeah, still quite tight. What are your sort of thoughts on the season so far, and how's that table looking? Do you expect there to be much change going into the final rounds of games?
Yeah, I think like we said earlier on, it's quite an open season. Like, Cardiff are sitting top of the Eastern League, but then Newport have beaten Cardiff this year. I know Newport's second, Ponty it's open, but I think in a way is what we expected probably. Roughly Cardiff, Ponty, Newport being there. And the same then with the Western side. I think we all said we'd fancy Abraham to top that league, and they are, and they look good. But yeah, it could change the next few weeks. There's still a couple of weeks to go, but it's looking roughly like what you'd expect.
So moving on to this weekend's fixtures then, game week 4 this week, and there's some real tasty clashes. I think every game really is very evenly matched. I think you'd have to say, there's no sort of standout. I don't think any of the games will go to big scores. Like there was a couple last week. All kicks off tonight. Cardiff hosting Pontypridd at the Arms Park in what will be a massive game. We'll be covering that game. We'll be having live tweets, a match report, and we're hoping to get some interviews pre and post match as well with some players and the coaches and stuff. So keep an eye out on our social media channels for that. Tobias, Cardiff v Pontypridd, then massive game. Obviously, we know what it means to the fans of both clubs. You got the City boys v the Valley boys. Obviously, everything that went on with the regional breakup. And you've also got added into the mix then Cardiff's team selection, who seems to be causing a big debate on Twitter. So what's your take on that, and what are your overall thoughts on the game?
It's going to be tasty tonight, I'll tell you that. Both sides, it's a derby anyway, and there's a lot of bad blood between the sides, and it's going to be a good encounter. But yeah, the Cardiff team selection has caused a bit of debate on Twitter, and you can see why. There's been a lot of boys, Cardiff rugby boys, dropping down to play. Some that haven't really dropped down often. But yet, in a way, you look at Cardiff and say, well, if they're available to them, why can't they use them? Which is a valid point. But, Ponty will be a bit annoyed by the selection, maybe not what they were expecting, but at the same time, it's going to kick Ponty on and make them want to win even more in a way, because you're playing against, there's quite a few pro players there, and it's a young Ponty squad, and they're going to go, well, this is our chance. If we beat these tonight, people are going to know who we are.
Yeah, I think that's a massive point, really, isn't it? Because no matter what your thoughts are on the Cardiff selection idea, I think if you're looking at it from a Ponty player type of view, and you see people on social media saying, how is that fair? They've got a much stronger team. That's sort of almost disrespectful to those Pontypridd players. A lot of them are age grade internationals and players that have been around in the Premiership for a long time. If you're looking at that from a Pontypridd player perspective, then that's got to give you so much motivation. Not that you need much more motivation for like a derby, Friday night lights. I think it'll just be a fantastic game tonight. That said, we'll talk about the Cardiff team. It's a fantastic team. No matter what you think around the eligibility rules, how many players should be dropping down to play, as fans of the Premiership, we want to see quality players playing in the Premiership, and to see the likes of obviously Dan Fish, who's played a few games this season already, to have Alid Summerhill in there, Scott Andrews, Harry Millard, big names like that dropping down, Sam Moore as well, I know you're a big fan of. is good to see, though. It is good to see them dropping down and playing in the Premiership. And a lot of people complain that we don't see the Stars playing in the Premiership. And then a lot of people complain when you do see them dropping down into the Premiership as well. So, no, I do see why Pontypridd fans might be a bit aggrieved, but as a neutral, I'm just looking forward to seeing them play, really, and seeing how they fit into that Cardiff setup.
Yeah, exactly. You can look at it in both ways. But if you're looking now, you go into a Premiership game tonight and you see the quality of some of these Cardiff players, and it will be a joy to watch. And as well, all the pressure, I think, tonight will go on Cardiff now because of the side they've got out tonight. Ponty will have nothing to lose. I know Justin Bennett will be telling his players, go out there, enjoy the occasion, enjoy who you're playing against. There'll be a massive crowd down there. And it's a chance for Ponty to show himself. But yeah, the Cardiff side, it does look good. It looks strong. And you expect Cardiff to come away with a good win tonight.
Yeah. So we'll move on from that game now then. And all the controversies that surrounded it. And we'll move on to the Saturday games then. And then in the eastern side of the draw, Newport hosting Merthyr. First game at Spitty Park, moved away from their home of Rodney Parade for the majority of the season because the ground share with the Dragons and Newport County is deemed to be not sustainable, which is a shame, isn't it? Not great to see a move away from their spiritual home, really, but logistically, financially, it probably is the right decision. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a shame to see him move from Rodney Parade because the history that's there. In the same way, you've got to think what's best for the club financially, and I think maybe the atmosphere might be a bit better now. It's a Spitty Park with a smaller ground. It'll look a bit more fuller than it would at Rodney Parade, but at least now they have announced that Newport will have, I think it's 2 high-profile games there, so they're not fully moved away, which is a positive to take away from it.
Yeah, it is disappointing to not see them playing there, but I think it is the right decision, and it remains to be seen what happens with the relationship between Newport RFC and the Dragons in the future. Obviously, with this decision that Cardiff have had to revert back to Cardiff rugby and play in blue and black. And
yeah, I think it'll be a good game. Newport coming off the back of a good win last week at RGC, and Merthyr coming off a disappointment. So obviously they're going to want to put the things right they did wrong last week, and Newport are going to try and carry their good form on. It'll be close. I think I'd back Newport to edge you, but again, I don't think it'll be much in it. One score, a couple of points maybe, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Merthyr come away with an away winner.
Yeah, I think a really interesting battle is the battle of the outside halves. Really, you got in one side you got really young Will Reid, who's really impressed us this season for Newport, and then on the other side you got Gareth Thompson, then former Cardiff player playing with Merthyr, experienced, real quality player. So I think that's one of the big matchups that you'd like to see. And then obviously the forwards of both teams, they've got 2 fantastic packs, really. Josh Skinner, really impressive for Newport last week. Merthyr got quality throughout the entire team. Paddy McBride's had a really good start to the season. The flanker got, like I said, like Jack Perkins in there as well. So yeah, it's a really tasty matchup. And like we mentioned at the start, that all these matches are quite evenly matched this weekend.
Yeah, all the games could go either way. But like you said, the battle of the tens, Will Reid's youngster, he started the season well, but then you got Gareth Thompson's been in the Prem for a few years and shown he's one of the best tens in the competition. But the way Newport played last few weeks with Will Reid at 10 and Matt O'Brien at 12, I think it's a big help to young Will Reid. He's got experience outside him, another kicker, someone who can put them in the right areas of the pitch. And I think that's the way to go for a lot of sides at the minute, is playing those 2 playmakers, the 10-12 combos, and it's worked for Newport this season. So I think that will be key for them.
Yeah, I'm moving on to the last game in the Eastern Conference then. And Ebu with the second Gwent team in 2 weeks to make the long trip up to RGC. This one's going to be a slightly later kickoff at 5:30. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I think Ebu will be up for a big time now this weekend. A disappointing defeat last week at home against Cardiff, and RGC obviously still looking for that first win. And again, in front of their home crowd, a bit later, I know, because RGC want to try and get as many of the local, sides coming to watch. So hopefully they'll have a good crowd there for a decent game of rugby. It'll be physical. Ebu is very strong up front. But RGC have got the quality, to beat them. We've seen a couple of tries they've scored the last few weeks, and they've scored some very impressive tries. But I think Ebu will come away with the win, just because I think they've had such a good start to the season, and that blip last week. They're going to be firing and ready to put that right this week.
Yeah, Ebu, even though they lost quite convincingly last week against Cardiff, it's interesting. They've gone with a very similar side. There's been a few tweaks in the backs. I know experienced Dan Heyman's come in, a few tweaks in the pack as well. But on balance, it's quite a similar side. So you'd like to think that that's an indication that of what Greg's worked on in the week, and Greg's probably said last weekend wasn't good enough, and he's given those players the chance to fix that. So you'd expect them to come out firing. One thing I wanted to touch on for RGC, you got the first starts of the club for Brodie Coughlin and Evan Lloyd, two Dragons Academy players. We mentioned Kerry Jones wants to put his stamp on the club, and obviously come in from Gwent and taking those Dragons Academy players with them in crucial positions as well, hooker and a 10. Evan Lloyd actually had a few games for the Dragons senior team when they had a few injuries at the tail end of last season. Played in Europe against Bordeaux, so he's going to bring some fantastic experience with him. And yeah, I know he's a really cool character, very composed, and likes to run the game. Sort of the opposite to Brodie Coughlin, really, because he really does bring some aggression. He carries really hard. Had some Premiership experience with Newport as well, just before COVID, and I know they were really impressed with him there. Actually, I think he won a couple of man of the matches in a couple of games. So it'd be interesting to see how they get on at RGC. But yeah, I can only see him doing well, to be honest, under Kerry Jones.
Yeah, like we said, Kerry's come in and put his stamp on that team straight away, and he knows these young Gwent boys, from the Dragons Academy, and he's brought them in because obviously he knows they're good enough to make his side better and bring more depth and quality to the side. And it's a good chance for him to go up there, and play rugby at a good level and show the Dragons, show the regions they're good enough to step up to pro level when the time comes.
Yeah, it'll actually be a really interesting game. Really be interested to see what the weather does, because both teams have tried to play this season, and that's a notable difference for Ebu, really, from the season before COVID. They've moved away from your sort of traditional Gwent Valleys, hard, physical, running straight. They do like to play out of the back, and with the likes of the players they brought in, like I know David Howells and Jordan Thomas starting on the two wings. They're fantastic players. Obviously, everyone knows about Dav Howells, Welsh international, but Jordan Thomas been on the bench for a couple of weeks, so he's getting an opportunity to start now, and he's a really good player, natural finisher as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the weather does, because if both teams want to play, yeah, it might be really entertaining game, end to end, and perhaps quite high scoring as well. Moving on to the Western Conference then. First of all, we got Carmarthen Quins hosting Aberavon. Again, what a massive game that is. Tasty game. Again, two teams that love to play, but they got good game managers as well at halfback. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that game? What are your predictions for that?
Yeah, well, it's two quality sides going up against each other, two sides who were up there just before COVID, playing good rugby. And it should be a quality game. Like we said, both sides like to try and attack and play quick rugby. But yet both sides can do the dirty work and battle hard up front. I think I'd back Aberavon to edge it. They're on this unbeaten run, playing some good rugby. And Quins will be disappointed with their defeat to Llandovery a couple of weeks ago. I know they played decent last week, But I still think just the quality and depth in this Abraham squad they have is unreal for this level, and I back them to come away with a win.
Yeah, it's a weird one because when you think about Aberafen's squad, the team they got out, you think, oh well, like they're gonna win, and then I think about Carmarthen's squad, and I think, oh, they must win. It's a really weird one. I think Torin Myhill starting second game in a row at hooker. Pewey again, another start in the second row. Ed Sigary as well. So they got some real some tough boys in the pack, really. And so do Aberafan, and you look at the likes of Lee Pennell, players like that. So I think it's going to be a massive game, massive game. I know, just wanted to mention as well, Ben Lung, who made our team of the season last season. He's in there as well. So you got a lot of players. Honestly, it's going to be a fantastic game. And that's without even mentioning the backs. You mentioned the teams that like to play. These are probably the two entertainers of the Premiership. Yeah, just going through the team. Obviously, backup the Haydn Tobias at 10. What a battle that's going to be. Randall v Gage at fullback. So yeah, it's again just really excited to see how that goes. And yeah, moving on then to the second game in the Western Conference, Llandovery hosting Bridgend Ravens at Churchbank. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and another good encounter I think is coming up. Llandovery having a strong season so far. Look good, playing some nice rugby against the Bridgend side, who we've said, have come on since the last couple of years, and they've recruited well and they've looked decent this year. I'll be honest with you, I think the game could go either way. I think Bridgend have brought a bit more experience back into the side this week. I know Matthew Jones is back in at 10, moving Jamie Murphy to 12, and that could be big. Two playmakers who are good on the ball, know where to put the ball in the right time in the right areas. But Garland and Lee Reese are halfbacks at Llandovery, and we know how they can control games. So I think it'll be a good battle.
Yeah, that is a really interesting battle. Two contrasting styles, really, because is it Rodri Jones at Llandovery 12?
Yeah.
Because you got Rodri Jones and the Llandovery 12, who can play himself, mind. He's really good, as all the Llandovery backs are. Good skill level. You have to have a good skill level to be in the Aros backline, really. But he doesn't have to run hard. Jamie Murphy, a natural 10. 10s don't really like to tackle, do they? Being a rugby league player, though, I think he'll love to put a shot on him. But yeah, it'll be two different styles, really. And again, we'll see what the weather's like, because if it's raining down there, I think that with Murphy and Jones, they'll just start pinging them back in the corners, and yeah, we'll just see how that goes. Obviously, Llandovery got Lee Reese at 9, who's been fantastic in every round so far this season, as he is in every game he plays almost. I don't think anyone's ever said that he's had a bad game. If you talk to Llandovery fans or people involved with the Llandovery setup, obviously, like we spoke to Jack yesterday, everyone so complimentary of Lee Reese, and just how he controls the game from 9. And then with Garland, the experience of Garland there as well. I know they made quite a few changes in the park, actually, Llandovery. Maybe expecting not as big of a battle up front with Bridgend. So that might come back to haunt them. But then obviously the quality that you got coming in for Llandovery is still massive as well. And you still got the likes of Stuart Worrell there, who's like Mr. Consistent, another one for Llandovery. So yeah, I think that'll be a real tight game, but I'd probably say you'd expect Llandovery to come away with a win, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think Llandovery will go in as favourites. Like we said, they've got the experience there. And then the likes of Worrell, Jack Jones in the pack, some strong physical players. And people would back them again. But there's a lot of players there who are good enough. Like Gareth Harvey back again this week, very very good hooker. Ruben Tucker's first game, a 6 for Gent. That's going to be a big recruitment alongside Morgan Strong at 8. So be some good battles and it should be a good game.
Moving on then to the final game of the weekend, and Swansea hosting Ethley at St Helens. Obviously, we've spoken that both teams are yet to win a game. What are your thoughts on that game, and who do you see coming out with the result in that game?
I'll be honest with you. I've said it a couple of times today, but that game could go either way. Either way, again, it's both sides. I think both will look at it as if this is the game they're targeting to get our win, and they both have the same mentality going towards it. Swansea home, so they'll have the home advantage, and I don't think I've seen the Swansea squad come out yet. But actually, they'll be. I know Johnny Lewis is back in the centre, which is be massive for them because the experience he'll bring such a young team. I think Nathan Hart's back in the back row as well will be massive.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you for that game. Really, it's really hard to separate the two teams. A lot of youngsters in both teams, really. Be interesting to see how Will Hickey goes if he starts in the back row again for Swansea. Because I think everybody involved in Welsh rugby is really interested to see how he goes with the Ospreys. Obviously, Mike Ruddock signing from Ireland, a setup, and again shows the value of the Welsh Premiership. Really, that he's being chucked in with Swansea to learn under Hugh Gustafsson. And that Swansea team, and hopefully try and build himself as a player and try and push for that Ospreys starting spot, as many players have done with Swansea in the past. Quite recently, the likes of Morgan Morris, Max Nagy as well. So yeah, it'll be a tight game, and I think we'll know a lot more about the two teams after that game. All right, that's a wrap for this week's show. Yeah, as we mentioned, we'll be covering the Cardiff v Pontypridd game. There'll be live updates on our Twitter feed, match report as well, and we'll get some pitch side interviews done as well, pre and post game, for our social medias. So remember to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Welsh Prem Pod for those. On Saturday, then we've got Louis Holbrook who'll be covering Newport v Merthyr for us, providing live tweets and match report. And Iestyn Thomas will be at St Helens for that crucial game between Swansea and Llanelli. So yeah, just keep up to date on our Twitter account at Welsh Prem Pod and Instagram as well. And we'll see you again next week for another review preview show. Thank you and goodbye.